Australia doesn't have a housing supply problem, we have a numbers problem. Even though we're building houses at a record pace, apparently the only solution to the housing crisis is to build more houses. Instead of building as many dog box apartments that no one really wants to live in, what if the real solution is to rethink the intake? Is the current flood of new migrants every year sustainable? Can we keep approving thousands of new arrivals each day without considering where they'll live, or worse, without considering how it affects housing affordability for everyone already here? I'm Biko Konstantinos, and that's what we're going to talk about today. If you'd like to listen to an Aussie with Greek heritage talk to you about the financial markets, especially housing, why don't you give this video a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And if you don't want to listen to yours truly, join the bloody club. But what have you got to lose? Except your valuable time. Now let's check out why Australia doesn't actually need more housing. Firstly, Australia builds a crapload of housing. When you look at the total dwellings completed in a year as a percentage of total existing stock, you can see that Australia builds some of the most in the entire OECD. Then when you check out the number of new homes built per 1,000 people in the last decade, Australia actually comes second. And when you look at crane activity, signifying the amount of development occurring in a country, Australia pretty much tops the list. We've got a massive amount of cranes in all our capital cities, and Sydney's number of 401 is absolutely staggering. So considering how many houses we build, housing supply shouldn't be an issue. So why have we got a housing crisis? Well, we've gone from decades where we've had normal net migration levels of around 80,000 per year to jumping them up to around 200,000 before the pandemic. And after the pandemic, well, you know what's happened. Nothing other but immigration on steroids. And I should know, I'm jacked. Claire O'Neill, Australia's current housing minister, previously described immigration as Australia's special sauce. And in regards to immigration, she said, "We've never met a challenge or done anything economically viable without truckloads of it." Now, this immigration rhetoric was very similar to what happened in Canada, with Justin Trudeau boasting that they welcomed 400,000 newcomers, the most they'd ever had, but they want to build on that and set higher targets in the years ahead, because immigration is critical to growing the economy and helping businesses find the workers they need. But guess what? Both Canada and Australia have both now acknowledged they went too hard on immigration, and they're now saying that levels need to be reduced. Here's a clip of Justin Trudeau when he first started to realise he'd gone too hard on immigration.
Over the past few years, we've seen a massive spike in temporary immigration, whether it's temporary foreign workers or whether it's international students in particular, that have grown at a rate far beyond what Canada has been able to absorb.
And here's a very recent post from Justin on X stating they're going to significantly reduce the number of immigrants coming to the country over the next 2 years. But note that this is just temporary to let the economy catch up. Now Claire O'Neill is also saying that Australia will reduce immigration levels. Now I might be cynical, but it seems to me that both Canada and Australia waited until their citizens were so angry with immigration before they acknowledged the need to change anything. In other words, I think they would have kept pushing insanely high levels as long as it wasn't affecting them politically. And one of the reasons I say that is because of this. Since they said they would reduce immigration, year to date net permanent and long-term arrivals has actually increased. So everything's pointing to a government that desperately wants to keep immigration levels ultra high. But why is that? Well, high immigration grows the economy. Increased population means you've got more people buying more goods and services in the economy. And business loves it because they've got increased demand for the products and services they're selling. And property owners absolutely love it because the increased demand pushes up the prices of their properties, as well as the amount of rent they're able to charge. But even though immigration helps to grow the entire economy, it actually makes things worse for Australians overall. I mean, just check out the real per capita household income right now displayed here in black, and compare that to Australia's major recessions in the 1970s, 80s and 90s. One of the major reasons for this shocking result is due to ultra high levels of immigration. Now, immigration can have the effect on putting upwards pressure on inflation because of the increased demand, but it also has the effect on putting downward pressure on wages, because when businesses have greater numbers to choose from when employing someone, they can offer less money and still have enough demand to fulfill their requirements. So going hell for leather on immigration makes things so much worse for people already living in the country. Now, while governments might make you think we have to have these ultra high levels of migration, I'm saying that we don't need it, and it's only a very recent phenomenon. As I showed earlier, we've had many decades of very consistent and subdued growth. Our current population numbers and projected population growth is miles ahead of previous planning done only 10-20 years ago. And even in recent history, no one expected our current levels. Back in 2021, when Albanese was in opposition, he actually said that he wouldn't back the government's plans to take 160 new migrants because he said we should be focusing on training millions of unemployed and underemployed Australians in areas where there are skills shortages. So Albo in opposition says no to 160,000 per annum, but while in government says yes to uncontrolled migration. How about that for a change of mind? I mean, some days I pick out a pair of undies and then think to myself, nah, I don't want to wear those today. But that's nothing compared to the government's change on immigration. Even after COVID, the government still wasn't expecting to lose control of immigration numbers. In the October 2022 federal budget, net overseas immigration was forecast as 235,000 for 22-23 and 235,000 for 23-24, and they'd basically penciled in that level going forward. But then when we go to the May 24 federal budget, we can see that 22-23 came in at 528,000 and 23-24 came in at 395,000. So instead of the projected 470,000 over 2 financial years, Australia ended up with 923,000 over that same period. Now, whenever I talk about lowering immigration, people always clap back and say, who's going to do all the Uber driving and who's going to do all the jobs that Aussies don't want to do? Well, if we didn't have high population numbers keeping wages down, then payments for those jobs could be higher, which in my opinion would definitely attract more locals. And remember, demand for services wouldn't be as high because you'd have less overall population in the country. If we just use the example of Uber, bringing in an additional 1 million immigrants will inevitably increase the demand for Uber, meaning more Uber drivers are required due to the increased migration. And then many will say we've got an aging population, so we need heaps more young people to pay taxes. And yes, we do have an aging population, but why are we so reliant on working age people paying taxes to support the elderly? Australia's gone through one of the biggest mining booms out of every other country in the world. We've made so much profit from taxes and royalties. This could have gone into a sovereign fund to mitigate the effects of our aging population. And many people say we had to have increased migration to counter for the low numbers during the pandemic. Well, Tarek Brooker has compiled this graph of growth in the number of Australian households, and you can see how it was steady prior to the pandemic, averaging around 170 to 180,000, fell to 55,000 during the pandemic, but then quickly got raised after that, but most recently has surged astronomically. Now, Tarek points out that in 23-24, Australia added 291,000 new households in net terms, but only completed 176,000 new homes. And if you take out knockdown and rebuilds, we only completed 149,000. He correctly highlights that we've got no chance to build enough homes based on the current levels of new households coming into the country. Australia doesn't need more housing, we need less migration. I'm Biko Konstantinos.